Hey everybody, what's going on? It's Kevin coming to you once again with Weeds Weekly Wrap. We talked about last week. We're going to talk about this week, what we can expect. We got some random thoughts. We're about halfway through the year. We're approaching it. We are midway through May. We're almost halfway through 2024. I want to touch on why I think that has the potential to be a great thing. And then lastly, just sticking on the theme of how do we move some of this inventory that's been sitting out there? I want to touch on rent to own and what that can be, and what the positives could be for both a seller and a buyer. So let's just touch on what happened last week. And with very little data, it almost seemed like the market was on vacation, right? It's almost like the week before finals when we were back in school. Nobody did a lot of anything. It just seemed like time was passing and not anything was a major concern. But there were a few things that happened. Number one, it really showed us that the elephant in the room, that inflation is king. It is the major concern on everybody's mind. There's no doubt about it, from the Fed to traders to consumers. Inflation is the thing that is the major concern, because although about middle of the week, we had the lowest rates that we've seen in about a month, which was a great thing. And although they weren't great interest rates, it wasn't a major change. It just goes to show that the market wants to move in that direction. The market wants to believe that we should be at a lower point right now. And that's where it's trying to push it. Unfortunately, we had Friday where we had the Michigan inflation sentiment come out, expectations number come out. And for the 1 and 5 year, that forecast was higher than anticipated, just proving once again that inflation is the top thing on everybody's mind. And until the Fed gets that under control, or until we believe as a consumer base that that is under control, it's going to continue to present as a problem. So now we walk into this week, and this week is loaded with data. It's probably one of the busiest weeks that we've seen in quite some time. I mean, it has everything from, you have PPI on Tuesday, right? It's the prices that that businesses pay for goods. So that's going to be huge. FED Powell speaks at 10 o'clock. That PPI is released at 8:30 in the morning. The next day you have CPI. You have retail sales numbers. I mean, this week is loaded with data. So the best advice I can give is just buckle up, grab your popcorn, and let's just hope that everything comes in our favor, or at least it's a mixed bag, so we can just kind of digest everything. We can stay the status quo, knowing that over time it's going to get better, better, and better. And what we're going to see this week is, again, on the highlight reel is inflation. I just said it this past week, right? We only had one piece of data that basically came in last week that showed inflation was high, and it pushed rates higher as we moved into the weekend. With this week's inflationary data that's on the docket, and with Fed Powell speaking, look, I think we have the possibility of tremendous volatility this week, and I think it's imperative that you make sure that your client is in touch all the time with their mortgage professional. Because as we saw last week, they could have caught that little slight dip that happened on Wednesday and Thursday. They could have hedged against anything coming this week, and they might be in a great position, because the last thing we want to do is see a deal explode. So this week, hey, what do I expect? I expect all eyes to be on that CPI number on Wednesday. I think if anything comes in at forecast or slightly above forecast, I think you're going to see rates go higher. And I think they're going to remain that way until we fall into next year. We're going to have to ride those higher interest rates then for the next couple weeks here in May, until we get to June, we get the jobs number, and then we start this inflationary cycle all over again. So I think that's kind of where we're headed. The most interesting thing to me, like I said, is you have that PPI number on Tuesday, which is now this morning as I'm releasing this, and then you have the Fed speaking right after. So it's going to be quite interesting. I mean, does the Fed stay by its book, right? Does Chairman Powell already say what he was about to say? But what if that PPI number comes in higher than forecast? Does he then shift gears and say, Houston, we have a problem? And it sends the markets a little bit jittery as we head into the CPI number that's tomorrow on Wednesday. It's going to be really interesting to see what pans out this week. And fingers crossed that inflation is starting to follow what the jobs are seeing and what the consumer is seeing, right? Because what we are seeing is both on the retail side, we're seeing consumer sentiment, we're seeing consumer confidence drop. So I expect retail sales to come in a little bit lighter than anticipated. I expect that the consumer has been pulling back now at a little bit more rapid pace than anticipated, right? So I think that's going to come in lower than forecast. So hopefully that will offset any potential inflationary number. And then you also have initial jobless claims. And if jobs continue to struggle or continue to show a kink in the armor, I think that has the potential to offset, but a very an inflation number that comes in right at forecast or slightly above, because the long-term outlook of something like that is that interest rates are going to be coming down, that inflation is going to get under control. And again, the markets are forward thinking, so we always have to remember that. But again, it's going to be a crazy week, so just make sure that you buckle up. On the thought side, we are about halfway through 2024, and I think it's just crazy. We thought we'd be basking in 6% interest rates. We'd be dealing with multiple offer situations on every house that came across us. We'd be having that discussion on the both seller and buyer's front. We would have a little bit more inventory. That would be lightening up a little bit in the marketplace. We'd be in a much different place, and we'd be looking at another rate cut as of right now. But that's clearly not the case. But I'm here to tell you that I think right now where we're at is somewhat of a good thing, because as I just alluded to, what we're starting to see is the kink in the armor. We're starting to see the consumer pull back. We're starting to see jobs, right? We're starting to see the unemployment rate went up just slightly. We're starting to see a little bit more initial jobless claims. Things of that nature. And what that means for longer term interest rates is that they are going to be coming down. I think that speaks well for inflation. And what it does for me is it puts me in the mindset that I believe we're probably about 10 to 15 months out where we can anticipate that we're going to have better interest rates. And what do I mean by that? I think we're going to be at that point in about 10 to 15 months in the high 5s to low 6s. We are going to be a full percentage point better than where we are today. So while we hate to be here, but with the election coming and things of that nature, I don't think we can get too ahead of ourselves and believe that we're going to have amazing rates by the end of 2024. I think we'll start seeing better interest rates as we head into the holiday season. But I think we're 10 to 15 months out, and that's why I think it's a good thing we're about halfway through 2024. It's been a little bit of a rough ride. We're halfway through now. We can look back and say, okay, we've dealt with those months. We've made it. We're still here, and we can press on from here. And then the last thing I want to touch on, because I had somebody say this to me, an agent that I do business with, she said, we need more solutions to move potential houses that are sitting. And one thing that's in a lot of our toolboxes that we often forget is rent to own. And here's why it could be potentially a great thing. Now, everyone knows that your VA loans, your FA loans have an assumable clause in them, which is a great thing. And sometimes you can take advantage of that. But if you're on the conventional side and you locked in a lower interest rate, you don't have that ability. But a rent to own could be a great solution. It could be a great solution for a couple reasons. And let's touch on why. And it will significantly work if your potential seller has a lower interest rate where they were able to lock something in the high 2s, the 3s, maybe low 4% interest rate. Because what they're going to be able to offer a potential buyer is potentially lower payments than what they would see out in the marketplace currently, right? And therefore, they're going to be able to get that house under contract, get it in a rent-to-own situation, rent that house, and have the ability to go buy a new house. So the benefits to a seller of a rent-to-own that I see is, number one, the seller can demand a higher price for their home. They're not going to have to get involved in this buy downs, seller concessions, and everything like that, because you're actually doing a favor to a potential buyer, as I said. They don't have to go get financing right now in the 7% range. You could offer them rent in the 5% range while still putting money in your pocket, and then still have the ability to go buy your current house. And what do I mean by that? If your seller is selling their primary residence, guidelines allow them to use 75% of that rent that they get for their primary residence against their debt. So for instance, if their mortgage is $1,000 a month and they go get a renter for $1,000 a month, $750 of that can be put against that debt. So now they're only carrying a debt of $250 a month to go qualify for the new house. So they can almost essentially offset a great majority of that mortgage payment to go qualify for their next mortgage payment. They can go buy their new house that they want to in this current marketplace because there's more inventory before prices start going up. And they can lock in a buyer at a set price on their current house, right? As a renter, potentially putting money still in their pocket because they had a lower interest rate. So they're able to still put money in their pocket. So they're making money on that rental and they can go buy their other house. And that's something that a lot of people don't realize that you can do. So that's why I think this rent to own could be a fantastic thing. On the buyer side, the payment has the potential to be lower, as I already stipulated. Also, the buyer can now save money for a larger down payment. In a rent-to-own situation, they typically are going to give a down payment to that seller, but during that time frame, while they're potentially saving on that payment, it's going to allow them more time to save for a larger down payment. So when they get out of what is typically a 2-year rent-to-own plan, they're able to put more money down when they go get their final financing. Also, it allows the buyer a significant time to work on their credit score. And it may not be a bad credit score, but as we've talked about all the time here, a 780 FICO plus is where you want to be. And often I see people hovering between the 720 and 750 range. And with some minor changes and with a period of maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 months, they can get that credit score above a 780, which can be a significant difference in an interest rate for them that they're going to pay moving forward. And it gives them the home that they wanted sooner rather than later. And it also, if you're on the selling side, allows your client to move to go find the house that they want, to put a renter in their house, to offset that mortgage payment, to get that DTI low so that they qualify to go buy the home that they want. So I thought rent to own was a great thing to address. And if you have any other questions on that, I've done several of those myself. More than happy to assist you in understanding that a little bit better. So just give me a call. So, all right, everyone, I hope you have a great week. Again, it is going to be extremely volatile these next couple days. So, hey, buckle up. Don't get discouraged, whichever way it goes. Look, as we always say here, when is the right time to buy or sell? When you're ready. And there are both buyers and sellers out there that are ready. We just, as professionals, need to figure out all the right solutions to get them off the fence, to get them moving, and to get them in the right direction that is in the best interest of them. But when they're ready, we want to make sure that we're there to help them as well. All right. Lastly, again, have a great week. You need anything, you give me a call. Talk to you soon. Cheers.